What's up, guys? MugenLord here, and today we're going to follow up on the story that we covered where we talked about Sony maybe acquiring Kadokawa Studios, which is pretty much the parent company who owns the Elden Ring series, just the Soul series in general that everyone knows and love. And so the gaming side of everything, people saying that this makes much sense since the Soul series go way back with Sony. But the main issue that many people are talking about is the fact that Kadokawa owns a crap ton of anime and manga licensing, and if Sony acquired them, not only will they have a monopoly because they own Funimation and Crunchyroll itself, but now they will have another studio or publisher under their belt, and that means a monopoly over the anime distribution. So what am I talking about in today's video? Well, apparently they're saying that, from rumors, they're saying that if Sony is to acquire Kadokawa Studio, they would definitely have to buy everything. But the problem is, we're finding out that maybe Sony can't afford it. So we'll find out in this article. But before we dive into this, make sure you hit the subscribe button, the notification bell for more gaming content here on this channel. So we are going to dive into it right now. So apparently from Bally in the Comics, it says experts speculate Sony may need to buy all of Kadokawa, not just their anime, video game, and manga operations, and they may not be able to afford it. So they're not just talking about the anime and video games and manga, they're talking about there's other sectors within Kadokawa themselves that they will also have to grab. So we'll find out. So it says experts weigh in Sony's attempt to acquire Kadokawa Corporation and turn Elden Ring developer From Software and numerous anime and manga studios. However, they warn Sony may be forced to buy the entirety of the company instead of just smaller elements, and for a cost they can't afford, although their business rivals know they need it. And there's another thing we've always talked about. This is why I always hate, we covered this when it comes to the whole fanboys with the console war, you know, Sony destroying Microsoft and Sony making that money, this, that, and the third. But you gotta understand, yes, Sony may be kicking Microsoft's ass when it comes to the gaming department, but as a whole, Sony doesn't have as much money as Microsoft. Their money will run out faster, you know, when it comes to trying to acquire companies. They don't have that big wallet that Microsoft have. So it's a matter of who can spend their money wisely or effectively to get the job done. But let's move on. So it says, as previously reported, reports claimed that Sony was interested in acquiring Japanese media conglomerate Kadokawa Corporations. The company later confirmed that a letter of interest had been sent to Sony. The acquisition would give Sony control of many gaming, anime, and manga IPs via their respective studios. This includes Elden Ring from Software, Dragon Ball Sparking Zero from Spike Chunsoft, and more. Furthermore, Sony owns Funimation and Crunchyroll, which would give them control over an anime from its inception, all the way through to Western localization, along with a larger cut of profits. However, it may not be as smooth sailing as Bloomberg Takashi reports. Both Sony and Kadokawa may want very different things from the sale. So yeah, that's another thing you have to understand when it comes to these acquisitions. It's not just as simple of, you know, I have the money as a company and I'm going to just walk in, you know, just slam my wallet on the table and say, hey, I'm buying you guys. It's also about the alignment and about the visions of both companies, and rather that this company's vision is in the same alignment with the company that's trying to acquire them. So they're looking for something out of this. And the thing is, Sony sees it as, hey, if I get this, we'll get the anime properties and we'll also get the gaming properties, which is most definitely the Soul series. Them having the Soul series as a IP, as a Sony IP, they definitely see that as a major come up, especially when it comes to competition. But Kadokawa, from what we're seeing here, we haven't gotten to it yet, Kadokawa maybe wants something more out of this acquisition than them just them selling off their anime studios and their gaming sector. But we're going to continue. So it says Kadokawa reportedly wants everything to be sold, or not at all. Meanwhile, Sony only wants to acquire specific assets from gaming, anime, and manga. The latter review has slightly dipped due to recent scandals, rising again thanks to news of the acquisition. While Sony wants to have more IP to support its various entertainment ventures, Mochizuki reports that if successful, Sony would make billions of dollars in revenue for years to come. So that's the thing. They do see the fact is that, hey, there's some money to be made. Probably not at the moment that we buy it, but in the long term, there's some money to be made. But the problem is, can they afford it? So even so, the essential cost to acquire all Kadokawa may be too much. A news outlet focusing on Japanese politics, economics, and business reports that Capital Securities estimated the bid of 640 billion yen, and estimated at 4.3 billion USD. Wow, that is crazy. In their midterm management plan for FY 2026, Sony reportedly had an investment limit of 1.8 trillion, which is 12 billion USD. But Sony also acquiring the rights to Pink Floyd and Queen for tens of thousands of billions of yen. Variety reports the Queen acquisition alone cost them 1 billion, almost 23% of the hypothetical Kadokawa bid. So I don't know. They may be having some they may be having some regret here when it comes to this. Them getting the rights to Pink Floyd and Queen, which cost them, a shit ton of money. And now that they're looking at the fact is that they could have got the possibility of owning not only all the manga and anime from Kadokawa Studios or the company itself, the parent company, but they also had a chance to get the Souls game. And now that they had spent so much investment on something else, and now when it comes to this, and they thought that, hey, we can only grab this part, we only want this section of the company, Kadokawa said, no, bro, you gotta buy all this. And that wasn't part of the plan. So now they pretty much in a situation here. So we're gonna move forward. So it says Toyo notes that in addition to acquiring gaming studios, Sony does not have a large amount of money in its pockets. They don't. And I keep saying this over and over again. Yes, Sony is doing some big things when it comes to the PlayStation, but Sony as a whole is not that big of a company, and they do not have a large wallet. They really don't. So they have to be strategic of how they go about acquiring certain studios. I think the biggest mistake, in my personal opinion, was them acquiring Bungie. And the problem is right now, they're acquiring these studios just like Microsoft, and these studios aren't holding up too well. So that's a lot of money to kick it out just for these studios to not perform as well, especially when we're talking about in regards of Bungie right now. So they said further highlight that Sony has been named as a buyer in a number of acquisition deals this year alone, but has abandoned them mainly because of price. Yeah, they don't have the money like that. Despite this, they highlight the fact that Sony could increase their 15% shares and Kadokawa to 50% rather than total ownership from the start. That's something that they pretty much did with Squaresoft back in the day, that they put a certain amount of money in Square so they can have some type of ownership or some type of partnership going on. So they probably see that more of as a best route compared to them just outright trying to buy Kadokawa. So this isn't including the various pitfalls that come with acquisitions. These range from rival buyers charging in and causing a bidding war that sends Kadokawa's value out of Sony's reach onto initial lowball offers meant to start negotiating being taken as an insult. Studios also might not get along with the new bosses, among other concerns beyond a layman's scope. And yes, you also have to understand that as well. Especially when Sony say, hey, they were the first to get in there. And the thing is, other companies may not have even bothered to want to acquire Kadokawa. But if they see the price that they want or whatever, and it's a cheap price, that's going to attract other companies, which is going to push Sony out of the bidding war. Because this is all this is, a bidding war. So it says Sony are surely fiending to acquire Kadokawa, following numerous high-profile bombs such as Concords and layoff. Yes, I think the biggest mistake they have ever done was get the studio that produced Concord, and one of the biggest disasters. If you haven't checked it out, check out that video where I talked about it. So yes, they're hemorrhaging money right now, and they are still trying to acquire more studios to try to flip that. So it says Sony acquired 14% of Front Software, following up in long-time collaborations with the company. I didn't know that. That's something I just learned. At the time, Sony mentioned a broader interest in cross-media development of anime and games IP to support its other media business. So, in that sense, any deal for the parent company, Kadokawa, which also operates extensively in manga and anime, is a natural extension to the earlier deal. These other areas align nicely with Sony's anime business, Harding Rules elaborated. I quote, "The market conditions for acquisition have changed dramatically over the last 2 years, but Sony will always be looking for opportunities that can fuel its growth and bolster its IP portfolio, and that represents value," Hard Rollings emphasized. Continue, "They may also be a defensive element to this move. From Software is an important partner to Sony Games business, and it would not want a competitor taking control of Kadokawa and potentially disrupting that relationship. It helps that Kadokawa is also active in the areas where, which are a strong fit for Sony's wider business." Yes, it's all strategy to this, guys. You have to understand, when it comes to acquisitions, it's all about strategies, placing themselves in certain markets, how both companies can visions and goals can align with one another, and more importantly, as I said before, Sony already has a long established relationship with From Software and many other studios that Kadokawa has pretty much essentially owned. So it would make sense. They would get nervous if somebody else would come in, buy the company, and then that previous relationship that you had before is no longer on the table or whatever. So, and they could take From Software and make deals with other companies, especially with Sony's competitors. So it's a whole lot of business warfare that's going on with this, but it's interesting to see that Sony's wallet is really not that big. It's not that big at all, and there's some people that thinks that Sony's wallet is that big, especially these console war fanboys and everything. So this is definitely good news. I definitely wouldn't want Sony to acquire this. We talked about that in the previous video. Right now, Sony is just not the best choice for acquiring companies. Same thing with Microsoft. Microsoft's not off the hook, but this video is about Sony. But them acquiring this, we already know the history of Sony and their nature right about now. Sony's no longer feel like a Japanese company. They moved their whole entire headquarters over to California, so you're more of a Western studio. We talked about localization issues. We already talked about how they handle censorship and everything, and them having a monopoly over anime is definitely not a good thing. And especially when it comes to localization and how they addressed or how they handle such IPs that fans have grown to love. So I definitely want to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. What do you think about all of this when it comes to Sony trying to acquire Kadokawa Corporation? Do you think they are going to figure out another way to be able to get what they want out of this deal, as far as having control or some type of better deal when it comes to the gaming sector and the anime and manga operations of Kadokawa Corporations? So definitely let me know in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, subscribe button for more gaming content here on this channel. This is MugenLord signing off. I'll see you game fiends later. Peace out.